Hi people, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make 3 hats. The first hat is going to be this newspaper top hat with horns. I really like how the newspaper is kind of see-through. The second hat is going to be this tricorn hat, which is a seaman's hat from the Napoleon era, the 1700s. And the third hat is going to be this kind of baseball or cap, and it's made out of newspaper spirals. All of these hats are made from newspaper, PVA glue, hot glue, and cardboard. Let's get into the video. Okay, so to start off with the top hat with horns, what you want to do is cut a strip of cardboard, and this is going to be the width of the hat. If you want the hat to be larger or taller, what you want to do is cut a strip and make the strip wider. Now what I did was I added a little bit onto the end of the strip so it could fit my head nice and loosely. You want to have these 4 fingers in the hat as well as your head. Now what I'm doing is cutting a circle around the hat, and then I'm cutting slits into the circle, so when I fold the slits down it fits onto the width of the hat nice and securely. What you want to do is fold off this flaps down and tape it. This is quite tricky, and while you're taping it you need to try and make the hat as round as possible. So don't hesitate to ask someone for help. Once you've done, you should have something looking like this. Now what you're going to do is you're going to make the brim of the hat. So what I did was I traced the hat onto another piece of cardboard, and then I drew the brim. You can have the brim as weird as you want. I just went for a normal brim, just normal size. You can have it big, small, triangular, whatever. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting it out and then cutting the inside out, but I'm leaving about an inch left over so I can cut flaps in it like we did before, fold them up and then stick it onto the hat. It's a very nice and secure way of doing it. So I just pushed the brim onto the hat and then taped it with some tape. Don't worry if it looks a bit messy, as you're going to be covering this in newspaper or cloth if you want. Now what I did was I got some tinfoil and I made the horns. You can have the horns as mad as you want. I just went for just kind of normal horns, and I basically just layered it up on top of each other. Then what I did was I cut a circular piece of cardboard, then cut into the middle to make a cone shape, and used a bit of tape to secure it. Then what I did was I just stuck it on to the horn with some tinfoil. This just gives it a bit more strength when you're pushing it into the hat. I'm just making another horn for the other side. You could do 3 if you wanted. I'm just trying to make them as equal as possible. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to get your scissors and cut through the hat. So what I did was I cut middle to the top, from the middle to the bottom, from the middle to the side, from the middle to the side, and that creates kind of like triangles. Then what I did was I pushed the horn through the hat and taped it in on the inside of the hat. I did exactly the same thing with the other horn. Now what I did was I paper mashed the whole thing, the horns and the hat. Sorry, I didn't do it on camera. But now what I'm doing is I'm getting pieces of string and dipping it in watered down PVA glue and then wrapping it around the horns. You don't have to do this, it makes a nice kind of realistic texture. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm painting the hat part of the horned hat. I just got some paint and mix it in with some PVA glue, and then I use a sponge just to apply it to the hat. I'm going for a kind of see-through feel to the hat so you can still see the newspaper. If you don't want that, you don't need to mix PVA glue, or you could just do tons of coats. So now what I'm doing is I'm covering the whole of the horns in toilet paper. This makes a nice skin-like feel to it. So I just dip it in PVA glue and push it over the horns. I'm using a paintbrush just to outline the string. Don't worry if it rips. This part does get a bit messy. Just if the paper rips while it's in the PVA glue, just try again. Once you've waited for that to dry, you can now start painting the horns. I'm using dark brown and a sponge just to dab the paint on to the horns. Do that with both of the horns. Here it is. It's pretty much done now. I really like how the hat turned out, the see-through kind of newspaper look. And as you can see, the rope on the horns looks really well. Here's another hat that I made. I used cloth instead of paint for the top hat, and the horns are much bigger. Hopefully this will inspire you to make one as well. Okay, so for this hat, what I need is to make a kind of skull cap kind of hat. So what I did was I got a cornflake box, ripped the flaps off it, stuck a bit more onto the end so it would fit my head, and made a nice kind of hoop for my head. Make it nice and loose so that it can tighten up later when you stick the brim on it. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting strips down the hat, leaving 5 centimetres at the bottom. So this is when you make the skull cap, you can fold them in and it makes a nice kind of dome shape. Now what I did is I picked out 2 middle strips and taped them together to make a kind of curved shape, and this is going to fit my head. Then what I did is I got the rest of the strips and taped them already to the taped strip. If you do 4 at a time, it tends to make a more even dome shape. So if the strips are too long, just cut them a bit, and then it's easier to work with, and make sure that the end of the strip is the middle of the dome. You should have something like this that fits your head. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to make the brim of it. So what I do is I mark out where the middle of the hat is, and then I measure from the middle to the side of the hat. I trace the hat round on a piece of cardboard and mark out the brim of the hat using the measurements from the middle to the edge of the hat. If the brim of the hat is exactly the same size as the middle to the edge of the hat, it seems to sit better when we fold the brim upwards onto the skull cap. So this is me drawing and measuring round for the brim, and now I just trace round all of the measurements and then cut them out. Don't worry if the cardboard is too small. I just added a little bit more cardboard on and cut around it. Now you should have a circle. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting in the middle of the hat, leaving some space so I can cut some flaps up, which means that when I fold the flaps up, I can push it easily onto the hat and then stick it on so the brim is stuck on securely. As you can see, I'm folding them up, just experimenting to see how it will look when it's stuck on securely. Now what I'm doing is I'm paper mashing the top of the hat. I didn't need to do the brim as my brim was sturdy enough. You can do the brim, you don't even need to do the top of the hat. Basically the paper mache is watered down PVA glue and new paper, just strips. At this stage, you basically want to either paint or cover it up with cloth. I decided to cover up the top of the hat with cloth. So what I did was I got some glue and I put it around the base of the hat and I just stuck the cloth on. Then I made a few triangles because the triangles are going to be hidden by the brim when it's folded up. You've just got to try and stick it on easiest to you, but I thought that this would be a good idea, and then it's nice and tight. You can have it kind of baggy if you want. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting the triangles off with a pair of scissors. I didn't cut them right off because I'm going to now glue them on, seal them with glue. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting another piece of coloured fabric for the inside of the brim. So what I did was I just traced round the brim to make a nice circle and then cut it out. Then what I did was I folded it in 4 and then cut a kind of circle, and I gradually made the circle bigger until it fits snugly around the hat. Then what I did was I got some PVA glue and just glued it on. to the cardboard. Now I got some black fabric for the outside of the brim and I cut a small hole in it so I could fit my head into the skull cap, and then I got some PVA glue and I put it on the bottom side of the fabric and then just stuck the fabric on and trimmed the edges. To finish it off nicely, what I did was I cut some small strips of black fabric and got my hot glue gun and I glued down the fabric around the edges, pressing down on each side, and it made quite a nice kind of finish off edges. Then I did the same thing on the inside. You're pretty much done. I really enjoyed making this hat and I like the fabric that I stuck on in the inside. Hopefully this will inspire you to make one or one like this as well. Okay, so basically this hat is made from these little round spirals which are made from these straws. So what you're going to do is you're going to get one piece of newspaper, rip it in half again, then you've got 4 pieces of paper. You're going to open one of the pieces and rip it in half. Then what you're going to do is you're going to get like a round stick thing, I'm using a paintbrush, and you're going to roll from one side of the piece of paper to the other. Once you get to the other side, you're going to tape it and take the stick out. And you want to make as much as possible, seeing as you're going to cover the whole hat in these spirals. So to make a small spiral, you can cut the straw in half and roll it up. To make a big spiral, just attach one straw onto another straw and roll it up. You can attach 3 or more straws onto each other. And it's nice if you have different sized ones, as it makes a hat more interesting. Once you have enough spirals, what you want to do is find a ball or a sieve that you can put on your head, and you basically stick the spirals onto each other in a curved fashion. You can stick them on top if the ball is slightly stiff around your head, or stick them inside the ball if the ball is quite loose around your head. Also, try and find a nice thin ball, because if it's too thick and it fits snugly around your head and you put the spirals on the outside, it's going to be too big because the ball is quite thick. So a sieve is quite good because it is thin. Also, don't worry if the hat sticks to the ball, just try and peel the hat off and then place it back on again. Do that occasionally if you're worried about it. Also, I'm using hot glue, but you can use PVA, 2-part glue, Yoo-hoo glue, just whatever is best for you. Just that quicker the glue dries, the easier it is to make that. Once you've done that, your hat should look kind of like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the peak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace part of the hat. You can trace as much or as less as you want. And now you just experiment or just draw your peak as big or as small as you want. And I'm just going to do a kind of pointy triangular one. And it's nice if you make it kind of symmetrical, so the same on each side. So what I'm using is a ruler to mark the middle, and that's where the point is going to be. Okay, next I cutted it out and then started sticking the spirals on. Please bear in mind that this is just a template and that you're not actually sticking the spirals onto the cardboard. Well, you can do if you want. It's just I like my hat just to be plain spirals, so I'm just sticking the spirals onto each other using that as a template. Okay, once you've done that, your peak should look vaguely like mine. And now what I'm doing is I'm just sticking the peak to the hat. So I'm using hot glue, which is quite a strong glue, and I would recommend you using strong glue as well, or just lots of it. And so I'm just putting some glue onto the hat and then sticking the peak on. Now I made some straws just to go right round the hat as like a kind of border, and I'm painting them black. You don't have to do this, it kind of looks nice and it firms it up. And sorry guys, I forgot to do this on camera, but as you can see I just stuck them on as a border like a normal cap and stuck them right round the edge and the peak. Also, as you can see, I put some on the inside just to firm the hat up. And then you're pretty much done. I really like how this hat turned out. I like the kind of colour of the new paper and the borders. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you will try and make this hat as well. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it and inspired you to make one of your own hats. Here's a few other hats that I have made. This is a plague mask. Thanks for watching!